And in terms of the workshops themselves, as I said, there's 5 there. One is going to touch on getting the most out of your bean crop. One is on disease control decisions for 2024. Another one on getting to grips with grass weeds. People might think, well, why are we doing something on grass weeds? Well, it's a constant. It's always going to be there. And this workshop will give some great insight from a farmer's farm down the country. And then we have another one on a catch up on the 2030 Food Vision Tillage Group recommendations. And then we're going to deal with the question, are there synergies for the tillage and dairy sector?
January is always a great time of the year to update with technical aspects of tillage crops. There are many opportunities to get an update on a national or local areas of relevance to your business in the next few weeks. Have you planned what information sessions you will attend? You're listening to the latest episode of The Tillage Edge with me, Michael Hennessy. We would really appreciate it if you could listen, follow, and give us a review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcast from. One of the marquee events in the Irish Tillage calendar is the Teagasc National Tillage Conference, which is always the place to go to get the results of the latest research and thinking. I'm delighted to be joined today by Dr. Ewan Mullins, the head of crop science in Teagasc, to tell us what to expect this year. Ewan, the National Tillage Conference is taking place soon. What date is it on?
Indeed, Michael, it's on January the 31st. That's a Wednesday, and we're returning to the Lyrat Conference Centre in Kilkenny. People will be very familiar with it. This year, the conference is an in-person meeting only, so we won't have any live streaming. We've made this decision really based on feedback we've received from attendees over the last couple of years who have a real desire to meet up.
But the social aspect of it is very important to people to be able to chat over the coffee and over the lunch and that kind of thing.
Absolutely, it's all about engagement, and really, I suppose that's our main goal and ambition for the conference this year, and we've changed the structure a little bit to try and facilitate that too.
Okay, well, you might maybe describe some of the main sessions that you have coming up in the morning of it, because I presume it's a morning and an afternoon type scenario.
It is exactly, yeah. So the main session in the morning really is about planning for the 2024 season. The backdrop obviously is the weather and the challenges the sector had through 2023. We've had our winter sowing survey has been open for a couple of weeks. That's giving us some very insightful data. So the first session then in terms of planning is going to have research input, advisory input. We also have farmers. We have recordings in field, and really the whole goal of it with the panel discussion there is to get a handle on what are the options for spring sowing, and if we get a break in the weather in terms of maybe getting winter cereals in late February if possible as well.
Okay, and there's some new research on the agenda that you're going to tell the attendees as well.
Yeah, we always have a short research snapshot session, and the idea of it really is just 5 or 6 minutes of an insight into new or ongoing projects. We put an emphasis on our PhD students to deliver these. We rely very heavily on our PhD students in terms of the work that they do. And some of the things that attendees will hear about is the work. Obviously, we have people very familiar with the weed monitoring program we have led by VJ, and one of VJ's students, Charlotte, is going to give us an update on monitoring poppies, which are becoming a bit of a problem weed. We also have Jack Jemison is going to give us some updates on his PhD work on crop establishment. His PhD is coming to an end, and his work has given us very good updates and insights into the pros and cons of all of the different crop establishment techniques. And then after the teas and coffee, then we'll have an update on molecular diagnostics to give us some insights into seed health, and then the developments on the oats growers guide, which we intend to release and publish in actually early 2025.
Okay, so it's a very varied level of research going on there. Which one of those, I suppose, is maybe it's the oats one you were talking about, but which one of the research elements of it are closest to development in terms of actions a farmer can take on the foot of that research?
Well, I suppose people would be very familiar with the weed monitoring. The very successful ECT conference that was held back in November showed the impact that we can deliver for the sector through surveillance, monitoring of weeds for herbicide resistance, etc. That's a very practical and applied aspect to the program we have here. And it, from the feedback we're getting from farmers, it's been essential to help them manage grass weed problems. But we know there are other weeds out there that are causing trouble. So the work of Charlotte on the poppies and her PhD, which is only a year into it already and is already delivering important information. So that's one aspect of the work that really is key. But there's other aspects in terms of, I mentioned the molecular diagnostics. We've put a huge investment in the last 4 or 5 years into that, and that's really reaping benefits now because it's telling us what's out there in terms of, if there's any fungicide insensitivity, the emergence of new strains, how quickly they're evolving. And that's really kind of the housekeeping duties that we need to be doing, because that information that we can deliver then is really important to help farmers manage and protect yields, which is really what it's all about.
So looking down through them all then, Ewan, there's nothing really that's, I suppose, far away in terms of the actions, like all of those sessions you're describing there. Farmers will have access to that data, if you like, relatively quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like that, the research that we do, obviously we do strategic research as well. The plant protein work that started 2 years ago started out, I suppose, more strategic and now is developing some really exciting opportunities. But all the other bits that I talked about there, that stuff is having impact and will continue to have impact in the months and years ahead. And that's very important because it keeps the research program on track and ensures it's fit for purpose.
And is that for those sessions, that's all that's on in the morning time, or is there anything else?
So just before lunch, then we have our added value session, and there's two parts to that. Well, three parts, sorry. One is around the plant protein. As I mentioned, that's developing, and even in the last 12 months, we've seen huge traction in terms of the development of food processing opportunities that are using plant-derived protein. So Mark Fennan will give an update on that. We also have John Spink, who's going to give us some outputs from the carbon mapping project. And then Sinead Morris from SCTU, Southeast Tech University here in Carlow, with Lisa Ryan, are going to give us an update on, I suppose, really it's actually very exciting, the potential of domestic cereals to support the drinks industry in terms of the alcohol yields from cereals such as winter wheat. And then it's not just that work that shows it can be done, it's then the transfer of that work into the recently established Centre for Brewing and Distilling here in Oak Park, so we can get things up to pilot scale. And that really is the key thing. It's one thing to demonstrate through research that you can deliver a certain action or a test, or you can deliver a product, but industry stakeholders need to see it at scale. And that's where things like the center, our facilities like the Centre for Brewing and Distilling, really have an opportunity to make that play.
Yeah, and as we heard about over the last week or 10 days, the amount of exports that the drinks industry are responsible for is quite staggering now.
It is. I mean, it's a growing industry, and we need to be able to support it with domestically sourced cereals. There have been some technical issues around that, and many questions asked, can they deliver? And the research is showing that they can. So it's an exciting time, and it's something that we need to build on.
Okay, and you mentioned there earlier, Ewan, about the feedback from previous conferences where farmers or attendees were looking for something a little bit different, and the afternoon sessions are very different this year.
Yeah, so what we've done is, instead of having the typical afternoon sessions of more PowerPoints, more panel engagement, what we're doing is we've changed it, and to maximize that engagement and ensure the conference stays relevant for stakeholders, we're splitting the afternoon session into a series of workshops. So when people pre-register, they have a choice of attending 3 of 5 workshops on offer. And the format of these workshops will have an MC or a chair to guide the discussion with the audience. And then each workshop will also have a panel with a researcher advisor and then a farmer or somebody from industry. And we've been thinking about this for a while, and it's something we're looking forward to. It's based on the feedback we've been getting from attendees, And in terms of the workshops themselves, as I said, there's 5 there. One is going to touch on getting the most out of your bean crop. One is on disease control decisions for 2024. Another one on getting to grips with grass weeds. People might think, well, why are we doing something on grass weeds? Well, it's a constant. It's always going to be there, and this workshop will give some great insight from a farmer's farm down the country. And then we have another one on a catch up on the 2030 Food Vision Tillage Group recommendations. And then we're going to deal with the question, are there synergies for the tillage and dairy sector? This is something that is often discussed, and there's been a lot of conversations and narrative and dialogue around it in the last 6 or 12 months. So there's no point in ignoring the issue. So we're going to have a workshop there as well on that.
So I would imagine that's going to there'll be a lot of discussion around that. And is that the point of these workshops, where you have I suppose you're gone from a massive room to a smaller room, and a smaller amount of people given maybe an opportunity for more discussion? Will that be a feature of these workshops?
Absolutely, that's exactly it. The workshop, they're short. They're approximately 30 minutes in length. And the goal is there's maybe a kick-off couple of slides just to start the discussions. Each of the MCs or chairpersons within the workshop will have a clear guide as to proactively engage with the audience, and it's really important we get that engagement. These are because they're, as you said, the whole conference breaks out into these smaller groups and smaller rooms. It's going to encourage people obviously to engage more, and we see it through other fora that we run through the year. So we're excited about how this is going to work for the Tillage Conference.
So yourself and your team, you're going to have a particularly difficult job, I think, trying to ferry people from workshop number 1 to number 2 and so on and so forth, because I presume people have a choice, do they, in terms of the workshop, or are they going to be just allocated a workshop?
Yeah, they do. They have a choice. The key thing here is people have to pre-register for the Tillage Conference this year. This is really, really important. And to avoid disappointment, it's essential to register before the Monday night. That's Monday the 29th at 11:30 p.m. So the conference is on the Wednesday, the 31st. People need to pre-register before the end of the day on Monday, 11:30 p.m. And when you register on the Teagasc website, you'll see the workshops that are there. There's 5 of them there, and you select 3 that you want to attend. And in terms of the logistics, we've put a lot of planning and work into this. So it's important that it works well for people. So we're confident that we'll ensure that it does.
So the registration details, finally, Ewan, they are on the Teagasc website, are they? And people can just go through that, and it only doesn't take too long to register, does it?
No, it only takes 2 or 3 minutes. And exactly, it's on the Teagasc website. It's getting pushed out through social media now in the week ahead. So there's loads of opportunities and avenues to link in there.
Okay, Ewan, really looking forward to that, and I hope everybody else is. And I suppose to a degree, the way this is going to be set up, we really are encouraging farmers to attend because I think it's going to be really well set up for that kind of a social interaction and conversation during those workshops and other talks as well. Thanks very much, Ewan, for your time.
Thanks, Michael.
So that's it for this episode, and my thanks to Ewan for joining me on the podcast. There are also local tillage seminars planned for all major tillage areas across the country in the coming weeks. This includes seminars in Enniscorthy, Bandon, Arklow, Neenah and Athenry. All of these seminars will cover topics to help farmers which are of particular interest in that local part of the country. Other areas will have seminars in the following weeks. Full details of the events are on teagasc.ie/events. Finally, if you enjoyed the podcast, then recommend it to a friend or colleague, and as always, rate, review and follow on Apple or Spotify so you never miss an episode. And for more information, go to teagasc.ie. I'm Michael Hennessy. Thanks for listening. I'll be back next week with more tillage news and advice.